Chapter 5: Social Reform in the Progressive Era. The presidents that served in this era were some classics: Theodore Roosevelt, who served 2 terms, William Howard Taft, and Woodrow Wilson, who also served 2 terms. In this progressive era, industrialization was going strong in America. As before, immigrants were still taking the brunt end of this new movement. Most of the building in America was taking place in the northern part, aka New York, Boston, and Chicago. One of the biggest turns in the way of safety for American workers came from the event that took place in New York at the Triangle Shirtwaist Company. In the year 1911, the Triangle Shirtwaist Company caught fire and burned to the ground. 146 girls and women lost their lives due not to being able to get out of the building. This ended up with new safety reforms. Industrialization in factories had machinery. These machines were highly dangerous. These machines killed 35,000 Americans every year and injured over 536,000 as well. In the 1920s, workmen's compensation came into effect. This provided for the people who got hurt doing a task at work, thus making them unavailable to work for a period of time. In this time, we also had a health reform. Many deaths in the world were occurring due to major diseases such as cholera, typhoid, and malaria. In this point of the progressive era, the U.S. saw hospitals and healthcare centers arrive. We also had healthcare providers in schools to take care of the sick children. In the year 1912, Theodore Roosevelt decided that he would run for office once again. He was unpleased with how his vice president took charge after winning his election. Roosevelt would not run in the Republican or Democrat parties, but yet come up with his own party, the Bull Moose Party. Though the Roosevelt's campaign ended up in defeat, one of the greatest American presidents, Woodrow Wilson, would be taking his place in American politics. In the now 20th century, the country in which we live in today saw great reform. For the better, Jane Addams and Paul Kellogg passed through great strides getting mother's pension and juvenile pension. This would later help the American economy for good. We saw in Chapter 4 when we talked about the oppression of women in the society. Here in the 20th century, now we have changed in the U.S. The National American Women's Suffrage Association. The large movement helped women gain the right to vote. In 1916, 12 states had given the right to vote, and in the year 1920, the government would take on the 19th Amendment, which would give every woman the right to vote in their said election. After the Civil War, we had the oppression of African Americans. Though in the northern states of America the oppression wasn't as bad, but the South, on the other hand, was way worse. Way worse. African Americans, after being freed from slavery, lived in a great deal of poverty. Many found work in the fields that they had worked in when they were slaves, getting paid low income and too low to live off of. Over the years, African Americans found different ways to cope with adversity. Thank you.
Created using Powtoon.